Good morning everyone, welcome to our Polymer Clay Christmas Ornament tutorial. You can see here we're going to be making lots of cute little polymer clay ornaments, and 8 to be exact. So in your kits you should have your laminate mat, and it's double-sided, so it's got all your little goodies on there. You should also have all of your clay, needle, super glue, some twine, and a little clay tool. Of course you'll also need to grab yourself a wipe, just to wipe your hands in between, because any excess fibre or dirt or fluff is going to get onto the clay really easily, so you got to make sure you've got a really clean space for working with the clay. And then after that, you're good to go. So to start off, we're going to start off with our little Christmas tree. You can see here it's just a little green triangle, and it's got a little stump on the back. And then of course it's got a star and cute little baubles on it. So starting off with we talk about eighths when we talk about our blocks of clay, so we've got 2 eighths of green. We're going to be moulding it up. You want to get it nice and warm and pliable so it's easier to work with. And I like to start things in balls, so I roll it up into a ball, and you can see here I'm just squishing it out a bit and trying to create a bit of a triangle shape for now. You can see I'm placing it in the middle, and I'm just gently pushing it outwards to fit that triangle template shape we have on our mats. At the moment it's quite out of the boundaries, but that's just a matter of sort of flipping it, squishing it back together, and just readjusting it to your little triangle shape. It's pretty easy, pretty straightforward, this one. So once you've got it, you just want to pull your tree up to make sure it's not completely stuck to the template mat. And now we're going to be using a little bit of brown to make our little tree stump. And you can also see here some of the clay that we have used for the tutorial might be a bit inconsistent with the clay that we've given you in the kits. That's because during the filming I realised that there were a few changes that need to be made, so if you so if you do realise that there's a few inconsistencies, don't stress. But do contact us if you are concerned. So, moving back onto the tree trunk, my goodness. You can see we've just made it the same shape and the same sort of thickness as the Christmas tree. And then we're just popping it onto the back there, really pushing it together to make sure it's nice and attached. You don't want that tree trunk coming off. Awesome, that's looking really good. Awesome, so you can see it's looking pretty similar to our original Christmas tree. Just going to do a final little primping to fix that shape up. And then we're going to be moving on to adding the details to our Christmas tree. And by that, I mean, if you've seen on the other one, it's just a matter of going through and putting lots of little needle strokes, sort of to create that hairy sort of pine tree effect. You're just scratching and scratching, and you just basically keep doing this you do keep doing it for the rest of your tree till you get to the top. So I'll let you guys chug away with that one. Awesome, so our details are done. It's now time to go in and add our, oh, sorry, no, don't forget. We're going through and adding our details for our little tree trunk. So if you can see there, I've sort of tried to create a little bit of a knot, and then I've just done a few extra little lines to sort of create that natural wood sort of effect, but even if you just leave it plain, that's going to be totally fine. Moving on, we're going to be doing our star. You can see the one on the Christmas tree. It's just a basic diamond shape, although the one on the template, that was made quite a while ago, so you can see it's a bit more detailed, but it ended up being a bit too hard to do, so we've just made the standard. And the balls are rather easy. They're pretty self-explanatory. You're just rolling up little balls. And you can see here we're working on our star. So that's, yep, you can see that I'm just pinching it and then sort of pinching both of the ends to create that diamond shape and then smooshing it down to keep it flat. And now back to the balls. So we're just popping our little star on now. You can see I'm adding a decent amount of pressure when I'm doing this. You really want to ensure your little star and your baubles aren't going to fall off, but at the same time you don't want to squish them down enough so it affects the overall shape of them. Wonderful, that's looking pretty great. That's our Christmas tree done. So moving on, we're going to be doing our Christmas pudding, which is one of our newer ideas. Starting off with brown, and then we've got the white and the little red and green for the top. And it's gone. So what I've used is I've used the excess clay for what we had left over from our tree trunk, and then I used a full 1/8 alongside that to create the Christmas pudding. Sometimes it can be a bit tricky to distribute your clay easily. It's quite a skill to learn, but that's the reason you're doing this, I guess. It's all about trial and error. So I've just grabbed my clay, I smushed it up as I do usually, and then I've just pushed it down onto my template mat to create a nice little circle, smoothing out the edges. And I have to just grab my white. There it is. Giving your hands a good clean because white is obviously, being the lightest colour, it tends to get dirty very easily. So smushing your white up, we're going to use this whole 1/8, I'm pretty sure. Oh, no we're not. I think we're halving that again. Yes, so we've used the 1/8 and we've halved that again. And you can see here I'm just smushing it over. Obviously going over the lines, but then I'm just going to do a bit of pinching, which is out of the camera. There we go. It's a little bit of adjusting just to make those sort of 4 little drip downs. They can be a bit tricky, so take your time with this one. And then you're just going to push it onto your pudding, and this is probably a good time to do some final adjusting with your little white icing as well. You can use your the end of your little needle to help do the detailing. Awesome. It's time to move on to the little Christmas holly on top. So starting off with our 2 little leaves. Again, you can see the leaves that we have on our template mat are quite complex, but we've simplified that a bit more, so it makes it a bit easier. So to begin with, you can see I'm using the needle, but it's not the most effective way. I find that doing the pinching motions really help. So at the moment, I'm just doing sort of a three-pointed pinches. Goodness. So three-pointed, and then we'll do the same with the other one. So it doesn't quite have as many points as the original Holy Leaf does, but I just find that that's it takes quite a while to do. I really struggle to do it myself. Awesome. Now we're just gonna push them onto the top. Now that middle section is where the berries are gonna go, so don't worry if that looks too messy. And you're having your red to just do 3 little Christmas berries. Awesome, that looks great. So now we're on to Gingy. So I think we're using, yes, 2 blocks of 10, 2/8 of 10, sorry. We're just gonna roll it up into a ball like usual. And I break it in half because we use half of the 1/8 or 1/8 for sort of the head and body, and then we use the other bit for our arms and legs. So I've rolled it up to make it all squishy, and then I'm trying to create that head shape. Sometimes you have to pinch it in quite a bit. And smoothing it out. A lot of smoothing. So you can see it's taking me quite a while to get this part done, but I'm just trying to sort of smush it out and spread it out as far as possible. We don't want our gingerbread man being too thick. You really do want to ensure that all of your little creations are about the same amount of thickness so that they do cook evenly. You don't want them cooking unevenly in the oven, because you can have some burning and some that are undercook, and it can be a disaster sometimes. So I'm just squishing up that other 1/8 of clay now. And what I like to do is just roll it out into sort of a thick snake, and I'm just going to be grabbing bits of that and sort of pushing it in place for the legs and arms. Awesome, and really making sure you're smoothing it out so the body and the arms are connected as one. And you'll probably have to turn it over and smooth out the other edge as well. Really apply that pressure. And our second arm. Now, I'm just gonna let you guys chug on with your legs, and we'll come back when it starts to... not when it starts, when we start to do the details. So the base of our gingy is done. We're going to go through and we're going to roll out a big white, thin white snake for our arms. You can see here we've got the little squiggles on our hands and feet, and then we also have our little smiley face. So we need quite a bit length. And I've cut a strip and I'm just going to place it on and sort of squiggle it as I'm placing, ensuring that there's two sort of overlays on either side of the arms, so that way we can just tuck it back under the body and it's good to go. So now doing our feet. Oh, that one there, I was going to say, I think one of them I do run out of clay, so you can see if I've done that or if it breaks, I've just popped it back in place and kept going with that same curved motion. And I've just popped the mouth on, so that's obviously just a matter of grabbing a strip and then laying it on top. And the little eyeballs, you just roll it up into a ball and press it in place. Now you do want to be careful with your eyeball to mouth ratio. You don't want to have eyeballs that are too big or too small. But then again, if you like that, it's up to you. All about personal preference. So I popped my two little buttons on, and now I'm going to... What am I going to do? Yes, we're going to do the holly. I wasn't sure if we're going to do the details first. Holly first. So it's the same thing as before with our Christmas pudding. You're just rolling out two little bits for the leaves. I've smushed it down, and then I'm going to do that exact same pinching motion that we did with our Christmas pudding. So you can see it's created kind of like a diamond effect, like the one we did on the Christmas tree. So a lot of the steps we do on this tutorial are very repetitive, but it really sort of solidifies those skills that you need to work with polymer clay effectively. I'm going to put our little berries on. We're almost done with our little gingerbread man. I think the gingerbread man's definitely going to be my favourite. Oh, and he's done. We're just going to put our little spots for our buttons, or a hole for our buttons, sorry. And then we're going to go through and just do a couple little stripes on our holly. You can see here the detailing of it. And the final thing to do is just to go through and wrap those little bits of white icing around to the back of your gingerbread man. Now we're moving on to the snowman. Really chugging through them now. So you can see we're going to start with our white. Now again, you really want to make sure you have clean hands for this part. And I think we've got 2/8 of white here, but you're not going to use it all. So you're just sticking to the template mat once again. So if you have too much or too little, you just pull a bit out and adjust it. I think with this one, I do end up going just a bit bigger than what's on the template anyway. So if you would like to do that, that's totally cool. But you need to be careful not to go too big, because otherwise you might not have quite enough clay to go around. Awesome, so our little bodies are done. You can see we're just going to pop them together and really apply a good amount of pressure. This snowman in particular tends to come apart after it's cooked. So really squish those body parts together without affecting the shape. Awesome, now we're going to make our scarf. So you can see on our original snowman there, he's got a big red scarf and he's got the green stripes as well. So that's just a matter of grabbing your red, rolling it out into a snake, and I've cut it to the length of the scarf, and then I'm just going to smush it down to make it nice and flat. Beautiful. Now we're going to go through and do, obviously roll this up a bit thinner than we did our red, because we're going to be doing some little green stripes. Now the ones that we have on our original snowman, they're quite thick. So if you want thick stripes, thin stripes, no stripes, spots, whatever you really want. Do you want me to keep rattling them off? No. Continuing on. So, doing your little stripes and just popping them in place. And you can see as I apply that pressure, the stripes get thicker. So obviously we can see we're starting out with quite thin, but the size increases as we push it down. So you've really got to be mindful of that when you are creating your little stripes. And then I'm just going to roll that excess around to the back. And just go through and sort of squish everything to make sure it's quite combined and it doesn't look like the green separate to the red. We want to make sure it's one big scarf. And that one was just a little bit too short, so we're just going to try and stretch it out without impacting our shape too much. I'm just making it a bit thinner, drawing it out. There we go. Awesome. As you can see, we've got our little bits of orange and black here, starting off with our orange because the black tends to stain your hands a little bit. You're just going to be rolling into a little cone shape. And then moving on to the black. The face is quite easy. You can see it's just a matter of doing 2 eyes and then going to smaller spots for our mouth. And I'm going to push that nose in between. Now I did do the nose a little bit close to the eyes. You can see the original's a bit more spaced out. But yeah, it's all up to you guys as to where you want to put them. You can see I'm doing really quite tiny spots because again, if you do your spots too big, they'll end up increasing in size when you push them down and it'll sort of blend together with each other. And then finally, we're going to do his cute little hat. So I've just rolled out a ball, I've squished it, and then I pinched one of the sides to create a bit of a teardrop shape. And then I've rolled out a little bit of a snake to do the brim of his hat. And then I've just rolled over those edges to make it look a bit more rounded and to obviously make it fit the template mat. And then this part's a bit tricky, is squishing it onto the head without, again, changing the shape of your hat. But you really want to make sure it's combined with your white. Snowman's done. Now it's moving on to the baby gnome. I think we've only got 2 more left to go. No, 3. Got a baby gnome, Santa, and a candy cane. So, you can see here I've got all these body parts separated. We're going to start with the green. This part's pretty simple. You're just going to roll it up, smush it down, and then just do some pinching to create that slight triangle shape for his body. And then we're going to go through and use our beige to create our body parts. So I like to start off with the feet, or the little toes to be exact. You can see here I'm just rolling up lots of balls, going down in size from our big toe to our little toe. And you definitely want to ensure that there's a clear difference between your big toe and little toe, just because this is obviously what's going to make it look like a cute little baby foot. And I obsess over the little toe, all of the toes to be exact. So now I'm just rolling up a ball and I'm going to be creating the bottom of my feet. Now you don't want the feet to be too big, that's for sure. Really try and stick with what's the size of the template mat, the feet of the template mat, sorry. And I've squished it and shaped it to create kind of, again, like a teardrop trobby shape. So you squish it, you pinch one side to make it nice and sort of angled for our heel, and then the other side's quite flat. Now the ears, they're pretty easy. You're just going to roll up little balls, smush them flat, and then you do a slight little pinch to create the little ears, the little points in the ears. Next, we're going to do our nose. And then the final thing to do with our beige is our head and our arms. So again, with this, you really want to ensure all of your parts are similar size in sort of width or thickness, sorry, just so everything cooks nice and evenly when they're in the oven. Now the final thing I'm doing the arms, I've just rolled it out and bent it. And the final thing's the hat. So the red will definitely leave a lot of residue on your hands. You can already see they're getting quite dirty. So absolutely give them a good wash. So rolling up into a ball, squishing it down, I'm going to start off with just a basic triangle shape. And you can see here I'm just smushing it out to try and create the perfect shape of the hat. A nice tip, pulling it out on the edges. And you can see on both sides I've got a sort of pinched sharp edge, and that's because that's sort of where it's gonna it's a bit hard to explain, where it's gonna wrap around the head. You'll see that when we start putting it together, it'll make a bit more sense. So I've got our body and our head and our nose, and then we're going to chuck our little cute feet, again making sure we're applying a good amount of pressure. I find with polymer clay too, there's definitely the less time you touch it, the better it ends up looking. So if you're molding it, working with it way too much, it's going to end up being really lumpy and not such a smooth finish. So the simpler moves you can do, the better. Now I've just popped all those little toes on. You can see it's just a matter of pushing them on. Again, good pressure, but not too much because they will squish down really easy. So now we're just going to push our arms on to the back. And you probably also noticed that I haven't used the clay tool at all throughout this because I just prefer to work with my hands, but we've chucked it in there just in case you guys are wanting it. Awesome. Little gnome's done. He just needs his hat on top. So I'm going to stretch out that brim section. You can see I'm trying to make it look like, yep, it wraps around his head, and also so it is sort of leaning on the top of his nose as well. I don't know if you've seen my traditional gnomes that I do, but I'm trying to keep within that same sort of theme. And just finally fixing up the little curl at the top. You can customize this or make it however you want. I just go with a simple little twist. All right, now this one, I think I said at the beginning that the Christmas tree was the easiest, but honestly, this one is the easiest, and it's a lot of fun. So you can see here, I've just got the white, I've got 1/8 of each, and I'm gonna pull a little bit off because we don't quite use all of it. Yeah, have a go if you like, if you just wanna add the two together, but you'll see it ends up making quite a long candy cane. So using like a bit less than 1/8. I'm going to say about 3/4 of an eighth. We've rolled them out the same thickness, and then we're just twisting them together. This is, oh, I love this part. Twisting, and then I'm going to put it on the mat, and you're just going to roll it out so it's nice and smooth and combined. Awesome. And then we're just going to bend it to the shape that we want. So you can see it's a little bit little long, so I'm just going to move it down, make it a little bit thicker. Awesome. And that's the candy cane Dunskies. Now, oh, I forgot about, the Christmas stocking's a new one, so I always forget about it. But we're moving on to the Christmas stocking. Starting with our white, because we don't want to be getting red and white mixed up. So I've just rolled out a little snake. I'm smushing it down. This is going to create the fur for our white stocking. And again, it sort of overlaps, and that's because we're going to wrap it behind our red stocking part. And now we're just going to roll up lots of thin little bits for our Christmas ribbon. Doing them quite thin. And just leaving that there for now, ready for later. Moving on, we're going to do our little presents. Smushing them in place, and you can see the bottom part's quite messy, and that's because it tucks under the stocking anyway, so you can't see it. You just want to ensure that top part's nice and square and represents a present. And then we'll go through and do the same thing with the red. Now that they're done, we're going to go through and use our little bit of white ribbon, and we're just going to do a crisscross effect for our ribbon effect. Awesome, and then tucking your excess in behind. Awesome, now we're grabbing 1/8 of clay and smushing it up. And I'm rolling it slightly so it's a bit of a snake shape. This will just make it a bit easier for us to distribute across our stocking shape. And I'm just bending it and basically just trying to shape it to the size that I'm after. And peeling it off to make sure it's not stuck entirely. And now we're just going to pop our little presents on before putting our white strip. Awesome, that's looking great. Oh, I'm just going to do some final adjustments. If you're not completely happy with the shape of your stocking, feel free to change it. Awesome, moving on to the last one. Mr. Santa Claus. I figured we'd leave the best till last. Well, he's not my favourite necessarily, but you know, Santa's the man. So we're going to grab 1/8 of clay to begin with, and I think we've grabbed about 1/4 of that. And we're simply going to be doing the arms to begin with, so just rolling it out like a snake, using your needle to cut it, and you're just matching it up with the little spots for the arms. Now we're using the rest of it to make our body. So you can see I rolled it out and I created a similar shape to the body, just a bit smaller, and then I pop it in the middle and just spread it out with my fingers to smooth it out. And we're grabbing another 1/8 now, but we're only using about half of it. Probably not even that, maybe a bit less than half. And we're just going to smush it out. I say a lot of smushing. There's a lot of smushing in this. So pushing it out, and you can see there I've sort of went over the actual red section and into the white, but that's cool. That's where the white's going to overlay anyway, so it doesn't affect that at all. And we're going to do the beige first, and do the white very last. Now the beige is pretty straightforward, so you're going to do little balls for his hands and feet, and then you'll be doing a slightly bigger ball for his nose, and then you'll just be doing a big flat circle for the head. Sorry, not circle, more like an oval. So I've rolled up into a ball again, a bit smaller than the head, and then I'm just smushing it out. Again, ensuring that all of your pieces are about the same thickness. And then we're moving on and we're going to do our little white parts. You can see I've just done a white ball and popped it on the top of the hat. That bit's pretty straightforward. And then we're going to do another white snake and roll it across the hat like we did with our stocking. And this is just where we start sort of compiling all the pieces together. So I've popped our body on our head and then our hat on our head. And I really try to make it look like it's, again, leaning on that nose, so it's got that sort of angled effect over the top of the nose. Then we're just attaching our hands to our arms. And then we're just going to go through and add all our little white trims before moving on to the beard. So with the beard, you can see I've rolled out a snake and then I've sort of rolled the edges of it to create it thinner on the edge, thicker in the middle. And then I've just twisted it up to create our little Santa beard. I don't know why I've done that because now I'm going back to the arms. Anyway, bit of an interesting method, but we're getting there in the end. And finally, we're going to roll a ball or an oval shape for the beard, smushing it down to the same shape and ensuring it's not too thick compared to all our other body parts. And then also ensuring it's not too long for Santa. Now we're going to go through and just add our little feet and also our arms. Again, ensuring you do a good amount of pressure. Don't want those little arms or feet falling off during the cooking process. Oh, and of course, his beard. So this is a similar process to Chrissy Tree. So you're just going to go through and scratch it all, including his mustache, make him look nice and hairy. And the final thing is just adding his two little arms. Again, applying a good amount of pressure at the back and just bending them over. Sweet. Look great. Now the final thing before we chuck them in the oven is to go through and put little holes in all of your clay ornaments. This is so we can hang them from the Chrissy tree later. And I've just zoomed in a little bit so you can see a bit closer. And just, don't they look so good together? Oh! I'm gonna chuck them in the oven. You see we just got them on a non-stick baking tray. Don't really need baking paper. And we're gonna chuck them in for 7 minutes to begin with at 200, but mine's a bit of a bodge oven, so I definitely recommend 180. And basically when they're cooked, they should be a little bit soft, but not so much so when you prick it with your finger, you don't want your fingernail going straight through the clay. You want there to be a little bit of resistance. And also it does start to smoke, so it wasn't quite done then. And there's not quite any smoke, but they are definitely feeling sort of good and tough. They've still got a bit of flexibility to them. You've got to wait for them to completely cool down before they're absolutely solid. So now's the time just to go through and make sure nothing's going to fall off. It's all nice and solid, secure. Of course, if anything falls off, you just use your super glue to quickly fix it up and it's good to go. Now the final thing to do is just to add your little hangy tabs. Now this part's quite straightforward. I'll only do a bit of chatting here. You should grab yourself a pair of scissors. I hope all of you have scissors around the household. And you're just going to cut some lengths, ensuring they're a decent length. You don't want to have a nice short one and make it hard for you to to tie up your little loop. Want a good amount to work with. And I've just trimmed off that little excess bit. Then going through, so you can see with this one I've actually bodged my hole, so definitely make sure you've made it big enough. If not, you can use your needle to sort of scrape a little bit out and fix it. And you might also find that the twine's just a bit too thick sometimes. So what you can do is actually separate the different threads of the twine, and you can just use one or two of those individual threads. Here, so you can see here I've pulled it through, but not all of it wanted to go through. So we've just moved on and we're just using a single bit. Doing a nice double knot and then trimming off that excess. Awesome. So we'll do that for the rest of them. And they are done. So I hope you guys loved this tutorial and you made some stunning Christmas ornaments. Thank you so much for supporting our little business and good luck on your creating endeavors.